They say ghosts linger because of unfinished business. Sometimes that business is trivial. A shelf, for instance. I didn't expect to die that morning. Just a slip on a bar of soap, a sickening crack of my skull against the porcelain sink, and everything went black. A stupid accident. All I'd wanted was to put up a shelf in our cramped Chicago apartment. Emily, my wife, had nagged me for weeks. "Just drill it already, Brian. How hard can it be?" I wish I'd listened sooner. Maybe then I wouldn't be here now, stuck between life and whatever comes after, hovering unseen in my own home. Death didn't end my job. It just made it much, much harder. I don't remember much about the transition from life to death. One moment, I was conscious of my own blood pooling on the bathroom tiles. The next, I was floating in a white void, and two figures, angels, I guess, were standing in front of me. But these weren't the winged, haloed beings you'd expect. They looked weary, like office clerks who'd processed one soul too many. "Brian Walsh," one of them said, flipping through a celestial clipboard. "Yeah, you're scheduled for transport to the other side." I swallowed, or tried to. "I can't go yet. I have unfinished business." The angels exchanged skeptical glances. "Really? Unfinished business? What could possibly be so important?" I hesitated, embarrassed. "A shelf. I need to hang a shelf." They stared at me. One of them let out a tired sigh. "Fine. Rules are rules. If you've got unfinished business, we can't take you yet." And just like that, I was back in my tiny, dimly lit apartment on Wabash Avenue. But everything was different. For one, I wasn't me anymore. Not in the flesh. My hands were translucent. My reflection was a faint blur in the window glass. And the cold. I felt it in my very essence. Emily was there, sitting on the couch, tears streaming down her face. She hugged her knees, her sobs filling the silence. My funeral had just ended. I tried to touch her shoulder to comfort her, but my hand passed right through. The air where she sat was warm, but I was colder than ice. I glanced into the bathroom. My tools were still there. The drill, the screws, the half-installed shelf, mocking me. I had to finish the job. The next few days, or weeks maybe, blurred together. I spent them trying to pick up the drill, the screws, even a piece of paper. But my hands, my whole being, were like mist. Everything slipped right through. Emily started to move on, or tried to. She avoided the bathroom. The shelf remained half-hung, a grim reminder of my failure. Dust gathered on my tools. But she wasn't the only one who noticed me. Our cat, Dusty, hissed and bolted whenever I got too close. His eyes would lock onto something invisible, me, and he'd flee under the bed. It was maddening. I was stuck here, helpless, with the unbearable knowledge that I couldn't even complete a simple task. Meeting Old Man Harrington. One night, after another futile attempt to grab my drill, I wandered through the building's dim, creaky halls. The place was old, dating back to the 1920s. The walls were peeling, the floors sagged, and the pipes groaned like tortured souls. That's when I saw him, a shadowy figure crouched in the corner by the stairwell. He was muttering to himself, his long, spectral beard trailing along the floor. I stared. He stared back. "Didn't expect company," he growled. His voice was like wind through dead leaves. "Who are you?" I whispered. "Name's Harrington. Been here since 1957. Died in my sleep. Heart attack." He squinted at me. "You're new." "Yeah," I admitted. "Brian Walsh." I slipped in the bathroom. Harrington let out a raspy laugh. "Bathroom fatalities? Classic." I ignored his smirk. "Listen, you seem solid. More solid than me. How do you do that?" He raised a translucent eyebrow. "Why?" "I need to finish something. A shelf. For my wife." He eyed me for a moment, then sighed. "You're serious, huh?" "Dead serious." I winced. No pun intended. Harrington chuckled. Fine, I'll teach you. The training was brutal. Harrington had me practice in the basement, surrounded by cobwebs and forgotten junk. He taught me to will myself into solidity, to focus every shred of my being on the simple act of holding an object. It took weeks, maybe months. Time felt meaningless, but eventually I managed to lift a rusty hammer. My form wavered, sweat, or something like it, beaded on my ghostly forehead, but I did it. Good, Harrington said. Now the drill. It took longer, but I got there. The sensation of gripping that drill, of feeling its weight in my hand, was exhilarating. I was ready. The betrayal. Eager to show Emily, I drifted back to our apartment. I found her in the kitchen, with my best friend, Mike. They were laughing over dinner, a half-empty wine bottle, plates of takeout Chinese. Mike's hand brushed hers, lingered a little too long. I felt something snap inside me. "He never could hang a shelf," Emily giggled. "Always all thumbs." Mike smirked. "Well, maybe it's time you had someone who knows how to use a drill." Rage boiled through me. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make them see me. But instead, I tightened my grip on the drill. If they thought I couldn't hang a shelf, well, I'd show them. Vengeful construction. That night, the drilling began. A slow, relentless screech echoed through the apartment. Mike jolted awake. "What the hell?" he muttered, stumbling into the hallway. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere. The walls seemed to vibrate. Emily clutched her ears. "Make it stop!" But it didn't stop, not until dawn. The next night, it started again. Louder, more erratic. Neighbors banged on the walls, shouting curses, but no one could find the source. Mike's face grew haggard. His eyes darted around the apartment, paranoid and sleep-deprived. "It's like a damn woodpecker in the walls," he snapped. I smiled, or I would have if I still had lips. Every night, the drilling continued, and every morning they'd find sawdust in impossible places. Tools they'd never owned appeared on counters. Mike blamed Emily. Emily blamed Mike. Their relationship cracked, splintered, just like my skull had. The empty apartment. After a week, Mike left. Emily held out a little longer, but eventually she packed her things, tears streaming down her face once more. The apartment was mine again, but it was empty, cold. The shelf was still unfinished. Final redemption. The angels returned. "Ready now?" one asked, not unkindly. I looked at the half-hung shelf, the dust-covered drill. My reflection, faint, but clearer than before. "No," I said softly. "Not yet." I picked up the drill. My hands were steady, solid. I finished the shelf. A simple thing. But sometimes, simple things matter the most. As I tightened the last screw, a warmth spread through me. The cold faded. Light filled the room. The angels smiled. This time I went with them. The shelf stayed behind, perfectly level, perfectly hung. A quiet testament to the man who wouldn't quit. Even in death,